it looks like there is somewhere a very strong and very, how it's called, a very determined hand who is doing the writing in the small print. And what I'm trying to do is to get out of you, if you know it, or if you guess, who is it, or what group is it. It's of utmost importance, I think, to know.
Now, one of the things that I always say in questions like this is that it's very difficult to find out who in the UN bureaucracy is ultimately behind any of these things. But if there's one man, it is Sir Maurice Strong, a Canadian bureaucrat from the UN 25 years ago, who said at the time, in an incautious moment, because they normally don't say these things, but he was so proud of it that he did say it. He said, I structured the UN's climate panel, the IPCC, as a political intergovernmental body rather than a scientific body, because I wanted it to become one day the nucleus of a world government run by the UN. The UN has always had bureaucrats in it whose ambition is to turn it into a world government. For that, the thing they need more than anything else is money. In order to get money, they had to have a scare. Maurice Strong saw in the global warming movement a potential for an enormous scare that could allow him to attract enormous money to the UN from its member states to try to make this scare go away. And so when the Rio Earth Summit came along and then the Kyoto Protocol came along, these were steps on Maurice Strong's road to world domination, because that's what it is. What we are faced with here is an attempt, which may or may not yet succeed, to stage a bureaucratic coup d'etat. Traditionally in the old days, a coup d'etat would take place in one country, it would take place by violence, one government would be removed and it would be replaced with another. Now we have a worldwide coup d'etat by bureaucrats without a single shot being fired, and we are paying them to take our democratic rights and powers away from us and replace them with what will essentially be quite a nasty dictatorship. And I was asking Václav Klaus, the President of the Czech Republic, what he thought about this. And I told him what was in the draft treaty, which at that stage he hadn't seen. And he said, well, you ask me whether this is communism, and he said, all right, so far it is not brutal, as communism certainly was, I know, because I lived under it. It was brutal. But, he said, in every respect except that, the similarities between this and the way the communists ran my country are far too many and far too close for comfort. And he didn't like the smell of it. And I think that most freedom-loving people, if they realised just what is being plotted here and just what is being attempted here, would be dead set against it. Because look, let's just pretend for a moment that there is a way of stopping the climate from warming up because of our activities. Of course, at first you have to pretend that the climate is warming up because of our activities. But let's pretend all of that. Let's pretend that, quite contrary to all the economic calculations, we can do something about this. The question then is, should we entrust the powers to do something about this to an unelected, communistic world government? And my answer to that is no, we should not. We've seen what communism did. We don't want it restarted in a new form. And I don't care whether you call it communism or fascism or socialism or whatever label you put on it. What I'm talking about is a system of government which is unelected, all-powerful, and capable of intervening directly over the heads of anyone who is elected in the economic as well as environmental affairs of all nations, and has the power to control the entire commanding heights of the world economy. Those are precisely the powers which the new world government is trying to arrogate to itself in the Copenhagen Agreement. And it is because those powers are so near identical to the powers given to the Communist Party in, say, the Soviet Union as it used to be, that I am calling this a communistic treaty. But that I don't mean that all the people who are behind it or supporting it are communists. That would be silly. What I mean is the structure of government for the world, which they are proposing, this world domination they are proposing, is a communistic structure. Unelected, out of control, all-powerful, immensely wealthy, and not having to listen to anyone at any point. Now, how do we stop this? Well, there are various ways. The first is not to reach any agreement at all. Well, this conference would not now even be taking place if they hadn't already done that. So we know they've reached agreement. The question, therefore, is how much can we limit the damage in what is contained in this agreement? Now, in a number of free countries like the United States, there are protections against this kind of thing happening. They have written constitutions that say their country, they have a Congress, it shall be sovereign. We used to have that and we threw it all away. They've still got it in America. So they will be saying, no, we're not going to be governed by a world government, particularly if we don't elect it. And this is where I think that we're going to have the greatest power to stop this nonsense. Because in their arrogance, in their desire to push all of this through very, very quickly, before it becomes finally apparent that there is no scientific basis for any of it, because the climate is not warming, it's actually snowing outside as we speak here in Copenhagen. We're not getting global warming, there hasn't been any global warming for 15 years. So people are beginning to notice this, even though the mainstream media are keeping it secret. People are finding out it isn't actually getting any warmer worldwide. And so the truth is gradually dawning that the whole thing's nonsense, and they know this is their last chance. They're desperate to push it through. They may succeed. If they do, I don't think it will last for very long, because countries like America, where I spent a few weeks earlier before I came here, are not going to tolerate giving up their democracy in the name of a non-problem, when in fact, even if there were a real problem, and even if there was something we could do about it, and to both of those questions the answer, strictly speaking, is no, but even if the answer to both those questions is yes, then would you not want what I would want, which is an elected institution internationally dealing with it? And I think what we've got to insist, as the peoples of countries that were used to freedom, even if in Britain we no longer have that democratic freedom ourselves anymore, we can still insist that at the world level we will not accept rule by people whom we do not elect, cannot hold to account, cannot question, cannot remove, and cannot replace with other people if we choose that those who were originally there were no good at what they did. We must have democracy, or we must have nothing.